Ray Lee with Speedboat Magazine here with another episode of the Boats and Bros podcast. And we are here with my bro, Myrick Coyle, and the one and only Mr. Doc Janssen, Michael Janssen of Powerboat fame. How are you, Doc?
I'm doing great tonight. Thanks for inviting me to join you guys.
Thank you so much for joining us. Your resume is as long as can be. It's so impressive, and just I spent the weekend with you out in Wyoming at your Powerboat Rally in Saratoga, Wyoming.
Saratoga, not Sarasota.
Saratoga. I keep saying that, huh?
You said that the other day when I was talking to you. I was like, "You're in Sarasota." Well, I'm going to be in Orlando, and he's like, "Well, wait."
Saratoga.
Yeah, Saratoga. Yeah.
So, Doc, tell us about the Powerboat Rally that you host there every year.
We host a snowmobile powerboat rally, and
right.
it's in Saratoga, Wyoming. It's always the last weekend in January, and it's really great. It's about 3 months or two to 3 months after the Key West last boat race, and so we kind of right after the holidays. It's a great opportunity for people that have a lot of powerboat experience to take that to what we call the snowmobile track. We kind of believe very firmly that at 32 degrees, water turns to freedom. And that freedom is about 350 miles of trails that get you to the backcountry to ride a snowmobile as fast as you want or can control. And it's similar to what Myrick experienced with the boat racing because the weather changes the surface every day, the wind, the temperature, the snow. It's not even, it's not a flat surface. And it gives people an incredible experience to go out there, either ride together, ride at different levels, and have a wonderful time. And we do it over 3 days.
Yeah.
Man,
how long have you been doing it?
Yeah.
Excuse me, how long what?
How long have you been hosting this event?
This event we've been hosting for 10 years, actually. We started this particular event for Powerboaters in 2014. With the year Mike Fiore passed away, and we started off as a fundraiser for some things with his family. And from that, it really grew. At one time, it was strictly powerboat racers, and then there's a number of people that come with poker runs. And we'll get a lot of participants that just want to come and hang out with the people they read about and watch at races all the time that like a snowmobile. I do find it interesting that we get a lot of participants that are great boat racers. They call us up. They want the fastest snowmobile with the biggest turbo and everything, and they've never once even seen snow before. So it is an interesting challenge, but that just goes along with their personality and their experience with motorsports.
Yeah. I've never been snowmobiling, so I cannot relate at all. Other than I've seen tons of pictures, and I've always liked watching it when you guys are, especially you, Doc, when you're in those fields and you can stand that thing up on its end and really carry it across the top of the snow and everything like that. That's pretty neat.
Well, we've been inviting you for a number of years, and your race partner come a few times, but we'd love to have you next year. I guarantee you'd have a great time. It's a family-friendly place. The kids have natural hot springs, swimming pool outside, whether it's snowing or whatever, that's all hot springs. But it's very family friendly, and they would have a great time also.
Yeah, I've known Doc for a long time, Ray, and I can remember when he was buying this facility and was going through his renovations and all that, and it was pretty interesting to hear him say, "Oh, I'm going to put a brewery in, and it's already got these hot springs with the teepees around all this, and I think even a golf course, if I remember correctly, in the summertime, stream that goes through there. Pretty neat deal for sure."
Yeah, we have fly fishing in the summer. You're correct. A lot of people will come and stay for a few days before they go to Yellowstone or to just experience Wyoming. We also have UTV trips throughout the Snowy Range, golf, spa, microbrewery. And some people just want to drive up there, stay for 2 days, sit in the hot springs, drink beer, and then they get in their car and move on to somewhere else.
Perfect.
I mean, the entire event was so top notch. You know, Doc and Billy Moff were kind enough to invite us up there to cover it, and you know, a lot of powerboat racers were there. Like Doc said, coming off of Key West, and it was so cool to see how the racers kind of blow off some steam away from the race course and the race waterways and such. And so we get there, and the first night was like hosted a 5-course gourmet chef inspired meal by your chef. I forget his name, but
Chef Ted.
yeah, supremely talented. Every course had a accompanying cocktail with it, and everybody just got loose and had a good time. That's the day we got there, and Doc and some others were. It was their, I guess, first day of snowmobiling, which was the Thursday, and then it just rolled into the weekend from there.
Yeah, the first day we went out, a lot of people were concerned. They're scared. They haven't seen it. They see this vast mountain, and they got a map. So we paired them up with people. It's called a guest guide. They can either go along or they don't. They can ride the trails. They can ride the powder. They can get an experience with different snowmobiles. And then usually by the second day, then they want to adventure out on their own and be independent. Because when you take off from where we start and you ride up the mountain, you may be 30 to 50 miles into what we call the backcountry. They'll sell some phone service. So everyone takes a lunch that was all prepared, and they can sit up there in the field and have some lunch. And there's a number of warming huts up there. If a storm came in, they can sneak into, build a fire, stay warm for a while. And that Friday evening, we had a costume.
Yeah,
That's cool.
that was a sight to see.
Yeah, every year it's a different theme, and this year it was your favorite farm animal. So people come up with some of the craziest things for farm animal, you know. I wanted to be a sheep and put a fence over my head, but I ended up being a snake instead.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I could see some people being pretty creative. I actually saw a few pictures. I think I saw a rooster, and then I saw a pig, things like that. Pretty funny.
Yeah.
Billy Clint came. He had never been with snow out in the mountains before from the previous Twisted Metal race boat from Saratoga.
Mhm.
We had the Batman team there, WHM, Randy Swears' team, Billy Allen, Rusty Williams represented Performance Boat Center. I mean, I could just keep going down the list of people
That's cool.
that have come. And we have a lot of people that leave their snowmobile there and come once or twice a year. Alex Pratt, and we take care of their snowmobiles for them. We put them in storage. We summarize them when the season's over. We carry them out to the mountain. And so they're always ready for them. And we do that out of courtesy at no charge to take care of them. And they love it. So they can just show up.
Yeah, that's cool. I think Rusty was telling me that he was on one of Billy Moff's sleds and he had offered it up to him. So that was a pretty genuine little gift, or very nice of him.
It was part of his turbo machines.
Doc is an amazing rider. I mean, his sled, I think you said it goes up to like 120 miles an hour. And he took us out on a private tour on Saturday, and it was all we could do to just keep up with him. And Chris Wessenhagen of KKJ Media and I went out there, and it had been both of our first times ever been on a snowmobile, and we were definitely thrown into the deep end and forced to swim to keep up with Doc. But he's an amazing rider. And he dug out a lot of people that were stuck, including myself.
That's great.
That's a lot of fun. So I hope we can get you out there next year. We will guarantee to show you a great time. You can bring your family. You'll have a wonderful time.
That's awesome. I appreciate it. I know how it is to be left by Doc, not on purpose, but just because his skill level and his machine. But it was on a motorcycle, and we went touring the West. I think we met.
I remember that.
Yeah, we met in New Mexico somewhere, and I caught up with the group, and he had a Harley waiting there for me. And then we went riding through Red Cliff Canyons and through the arches and all this fun stuff out west, and ended up going through the what's the cut outside of Denver where you go through it was actually snowing on top of the hill, that tunnel.
Eisenhower Tunnel.
Yeah,
Eisenhower Pass.
Yeah,
it was snowing up top. I remember that. Yeah.
It was like the day we started off the day, and we're in this, the desert in this warm weather, leaving, I think, the Red Cliff Canyon that day. Mm-hmm. And then it was a long ride that day. And then we went up through Loveland Pass, ended up in Denver and hopping on a plane. And he had a guy with a truck following behind with a trailer in case anybody broke down and things like that. Because when the group was as large as it was, people do break down or crash or whatever it is, and it was a lot of fun. We went to the Four Corners, where you can be in 4 states at once. It was a memorable trip, that's for sure.
I forgot all about that, Myrick. If I recall, I had a gentleman that could only do 2 or 3 days on his bike and had to fly back to Germany. And
Yep.
so I was able to recruit you to fly in, pick up his motorcycle, and join us the rest of the trip.
That's exactly right. And you guys were on like 6-speed water cooled V rods, and I was in a 5-speed street glide, and I was wide open the whole time. Hence my story, trying to stay with these guys that were like, I don't know how fast they were going. I think mine would go 105 like downhill. They were going like 140.
That's a great. We do a trip like that every year, and we get different people to join us with bikes. Some of them rent bikes. Many times the last few years, and Roger Neighbors, who I think Performance Center takes care of his boats, he drives a support truck and trailer for us with his wife. And they bring all the tools, all the liquor, all the luggage, and they're always pulling up this big truck that says Snowy Mountain Brewery and a trailer in the back. And so we can always have an extra bike and fix everything and then move on.
That's cool. I remember some guys, I think it was 2 brothers, and they actually said, well, I've had enough. We're just going to put our bikes on the trailer. We're going to ride in the back of the truck anyway. But it was a nice option for them to have, at least.
Yeah, that was a fun time. I remember that. I forgot all about that one.
Yeah,
we go way back from when you had the Naughty Marine right down the street from where my home is at Lake of the Ozarks, and I remember coming to your wedding out there, and it was an amazing time.
Yeah, Terry actually gave me one of the greatest gifts. I was actually I don't know, broke, I guess I should call it, getting married, and Terry, your brother, came in and shot all the pictures for my wedding and just gave them to me.
Oh, that's cool.
And I pull them up quite often. I was like, a very nice gift that Terry gave me.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, we weren't too far away from each other.
No, right down the street.
So speaking of Doc's resume, I mean, he's a super skilled snowmobile rider, an avid motorcycle rider, advanced diver, scuba instructor, and Ironman. Doc, you're doing cycling and swimming, and you're just nonstop.
Oh, I decided it was time to get in a little better shape. My daughter, which Myrick knows real well, Madison, both my kids became physicians, started doing these Ironman 70.3s, and I was a fan. And I decided, maybe I should try to get into this and start off with the relay, which means you do one part of it and then do 2 parts of it. And my goal this year is I have 4 events like that. I'm doing a 100-mile Mississippi ride in May. I'm doing an Ironman in Iowa in June. And then I'm going to Germany and doing a 112-mile event in July. And then I have 2 more in September and October. So this year, I have a full-time nutritionist, a full-time coach. I try to get up every morning at 4 o'clock and ride my bike and get swimming in before I go to the OR. And I've really became addicted to it. So it's a good enjoyment.
That's amazing. Cool. That is cool. I've always known you as being an early riser, especially when your go fast boats are going up and down the lake about, I don't know, right at sun up. And everybody's calling me and going, hey, you got to quiet them boats down. I go, it's not me. But yeah, go ahead.
Some people's sleep schedule is different than others. I mean, you know the law. When the sun comes up, you can go ride.
Yeah, I just, it was one of the things I always remember. I'm like, well, I can tell Doc's down this weekend, So anyway, but I was thinking about when you're talking about these, like you said, Mississippi 110 mile or whatever, is that on a bike? Is that what you're talking about? A bicycle or a mountain bike?
It's a road bike. There's 3 kinds of bikes. You got a mountain bike, which probably wouldn't be what you would do. You have a road bike with the curved handlebars, and then you have what's called a TT bike, or a time trial bike, where you're leaned forward like this the whole time for more aerodynamic. And so you can probably either ride a road bike or a TT bike. The TT bike is not as comfortable, but it's much faster. And you use a different set of muscles when you're forward, more of your quadriceps than you would in the swimming part or the running part. So you try to position your body to use different muscles for different phases of the events.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
I can get it down to, for me, at my age, I can do the 56 miles in 2 hours, 45 minutes to 3 hours. And that's, carrying all your nutrition. And that's even like in Mexico where it can be 95 degrees.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that reminded me. I remember this correctly. Didn't you drive a UTV like all the whole West Coast or something this summer or something? I mean, yeah. What cape do you wear when you do all this stuff? It's like Superman from
I
one thing to the next.
recruited I recruited a bunch of powerboaters, and about half of them were at the event this weekend, Ray. Jeremy Toshida and the dentist David Collins and a number of my friends and Joel Began. And we all flew into San Diego. And we joined up with this company called Off the Grid Expeditions, and we rode these Can-Am side by sides. And my wife joined me as a co-pilot from San Diego to Cabo San Lucas, 1,700 miles down the Baja, and did it in 8 days. We had two full-time mechanics in the back, and at night they reminded me of Myrick because we're all partying at a restaurant. They're changing transmissions, changing motors, changing gear cases, and everything, so that by morning everything was ready to go. And
Wow,
they had
that's
two or
cool.
three guys on the machine fixing things or whatever busted, just so that you could ride it. And the interesting thing is that then they load them on semis, and they hauled them all the way back from Cabo back to the United States when we stayed in a Cabo and then flew home. Most amazing 8-day trip I'd ever been on, down a third world country. Incredible.
Yeah,
That's
I
crazy.
bet. I bet. Some good stories. I mean,
Yeah, you should try that. I mean, a lot of people are always looking for a new adventure, and that fits one of the top adventures.
That's cool.
So Dr. Mike Janssen, one of the premier spinal surgeons in the nation, in the world, tell us how you got into the medical field.
I'll make it brief. I grew up in Des Moines, Iowa, and I was working as a mechanic for my father. He owned a lawn and garden tractor business, and had a distributorship for Toro and Wheel Horse. And I always had a desire to go to college, and I was the only one in my family that ever had any desire to do that. And so I went to college for 4 years and studied sciences. Um, Applied and went to medical school in Kansas City. That's where I met my wife, Sharon. We've been married for just under 40 years. And then after that, I had a big interest of using my hands. So in medicine, you can decide whether you want to treat chronic disease, you want to be an ER physician, you want to be a general surgeon, and orthopedic surgery is probably where you use power tools on patients. So that's great. And you look at things and you see things that are broken and you figure out how to fix them, just like Myrick does. You look at, and everyone is different. So I had this big fascination to do orthopedic surgery and trauma, where I did that for 5 years in Augusta, Georgia. And then I really wanted to specialize, and so I subspecialized in spine surgery and trauma. I lived in Switzerland for a short time, and then my wife and I moved to Denver. We were going to stay for 1 year and then go to Kansas City and practice for the rest of our career. And I love the Four Seasons in Colorado. I like taking care of patients that are very active and like skiing and mountain biking and all that. So we never left. And I started a practice there, and now have about a dozen surgeons and allied health professionals and there. And I do around 400 to 500 surgeries a year, in managing patients. And we also built a training facility in Denver. Um, Myrick's wife came and joined us for a time of her life trying to figure out what she was most interested in, where we have surgeons that come from all over the world and can watch surgery, transmit surgery, and they can work in a lab on cadavers and practice new techniques and things. And that's all part of the facility that I built in Denver.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a beautiful facility too, if you have ever been there. And the room that he's talking about where they do the teaching and everything is like it feels like a college auditorium or something like that with the stadium seating and everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a while since I've been there, but it was neat.
Yeah.
We can do surgery and talk live and have surgeons talking to us in China. I've been doing surgery there in our surgery center where there's 100 people talking to me live in Switzerland at a spine conference, and they can see everything that I'm doing and talk to us live. The only difference is the time zone. So sometimes I got to get the patient to come in at 2 a.m. so that it's 10 a.m. in Europe and do the surgery. So it's a little tough to do those, but it's a great way to share knowledge and experience. And For me, in medicine, there's two ways to make the world a better place. One is one patient at a time, and two is transferring knowledge and experience to other surgeons so they can make a ripple effect wherever they live.
Yeah, I can remember you traveling to China quite a bit. You for a nonprofit that where you were training people over there, I think. Is that correct?
Correct. I built this, was the chairman of this nonprofit foundation in Switzerland in Davos, where I'm going to the day after tomorrow. And we have 25,000 surgeons worldwide in this foundation. And the overall goal, and it's self-funded, is to transfer knowledge to all over. I've had over 100 international Chinese surgeons come to Denver and spend time with us. Most of them are professors and very experienced, and they get to operate with me. They get to see patients. We also take them snowmobiling and do some motorcycling and other things to give them a cultural experience. But it's a great thing. And I'm there. Before COVID, I was there probably 3 or 4 times a year, and now we're just starting to travel back there again.
And Doc, you had told me just this past weekend that out of all the extreme sports and hobbies that you like to do, surgery is still your biggest passion.
Absolutely. It's what you spend the most amount of time becoming great at. And, I believe, just like I think Myrick could tell when he trains somebody, I can give them a skill, but you can't give people a talent. They have to develop it, and not everybody develops it at the same time.
Yeah.
Which
at what point did you think? Well, obviously, when you were in college or when you decided that you were going to be a surgeon, and then you can take this stuff that you learned, being even as simple as being a lawnmower mechanic, and being like, oh, this is similar. I got to fix this, but I don't get to shut it off. I think you've told me that before. I gotta work on it with it running. But was it like you're right in med school, or years into it, when you decide that you knew that you're like, man, this is really clicking for me, I understand it, and I'm going to be good at this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I host a lot of medical students, and they come to me like, I don't know what I want to do. They're halfway through medical school. They have no idea what they want to do. And I always tell them to spend time talking to their friends about their own personality and look into the mirror. If their personality is they want to do a shift work and they want to put in 12 hours and go home, maybe they'd be great in an ER. If they want to work in a community and be experienced to do a whole lot of things, but maybe not be an expert at them, family medicine could be great for them. If they are the personality that wants to help people with chronic diseases, smoking, diabetes, obesity, but they never really cure anybody, those are fields in internal medicine. For me in orthopedics, you have to have the personality that you look at something, it's broke. I look at somebody walk in and they got bowed legs like Billy Allen has for a while, someone can fix it. Okay. And so, or when someone has a broken tibia and a broken leg, you can look at it mechanically, say, this will work and this won't work. So I think a lot of it has to do with your personality and your skill level, and we hopefully drip people. And if you do that, then they're going to be satisfied throughout their career.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. It's funny being the mechanic mind that I am, and you talking about these different types of even being a doctor. You can relate that with different types of being a mechanic. It's just obviously at a whole different level, but very similar.
I mean, my boat, and Myrick's helped me with my boat many times, different boats. When you come in and look at it, his mind is turning. He listens to it. He listens for the vibration. He's looking the way that it feels. And the customers stand there going, what's wrong with it? What's wrong with it? What's wrong with it? Well, that's the same thing when somebody comes in with me. Did you look at my MRI? Did you tell me what's wrong with it?
Yeah.
And instead, sometimes it's a process because everybody's a little bit different. And you can only give them your best advice. And Myrick and I joke is the only difference between what he does and I do is I have to work on the motor when it's running, and he can shut it off and work on it. Okay.
Yeah.
And so we laugh about it that way.
Yeah. I remember that conversation many times. And there's so many people that, and even day-to-day people that I know from around here at the lake that have met Doc, or, boat racers that, you get talking, oh yeah, I know him. And then mine was from being a neighbor and being a friend and being a colleague in boats and stuff like that. And then they go, oh yeah, I went out to his spinal surgery place, and he fixed me. And I was like, really? No kidding? I was like, that's got to be rewarding. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
But even yourself, I don't want to tell them about your medical history. That you were getting ready for a boat race at the shootout, if I recall, and you couldn't hardly walk. Remember?
Well, yeah. So that one was one, and he had actually looked at my MRI and found that they were overseeing something to where I had a herniated disc, and it was coming out and it was pressing on my spinal cord and it was making my left leg feel like there was water running down it. So he had contacted the the ER or the MRI, the image reader, and told them they screwed up, and then they said, okay, well, at that point I was all about Doc taking care of me. So if medicine fixed it and we didn't have to go in there
Yeah.
and lob it off or whatever, but Doc's also helped me. I think it was Mentor, Ohio. I couldn't even hardly get in the boat, and I had muscles in my back that were all tensed up, and he was describing how it's like a rope and a couple strands tighten up, and then that's why it's doing it. And I felt like a professional athlete going in, because he's giving me shots in the rig before we go in for the boat race. But it was extremely helpful. It was one of the roughest races I'd ever been in. I was like, man, this is not good timing for me to be going in one of the roughest races I've ever been in and having a back issue. But Doc fixed me up.
Well, we try to keep you away from surgery, and you've done well a couple times, so that's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
Well, your passion is so strong that you've also translated it into being the medical director for the Offshore Racing Series.
Yes, I decided, I don't know, around 2019 or 20, right around before COVID. At this phase of my life, I raced in Key West with Brian Forehand, and I was so sore for days after this long race. I said, it's really not best in my interest, but I like to help. I knew enough about boats and the escape hatches and the O2 rig by being a scuba instructor that I said I would love to offer my services, and I do it as a volunteer to the race organizations when I can go and try to help work as a buffer between the producer and the dive team and be there to help support. And I really enjoy it. Like when I'm in Key West, I take all the divers out to dinner. We talk about the plan, what we're going to do, and I trust them 100%. They're incredible, great team at these events. And then my job is to hopefully be there the minute they come out of the water and look at them in the eye and make a decision. Do they need to be treated? Do they need to go somewhere? And if I make a decision because I know them that let's watch this, I don't think you need to go to the hospital right now. But if it changes, they'll call me up and I'll come over to their condo and see them or whatever, and just be part of their team.
I tell you what, it makes me feel way more comfortable knowing Doc's there at a race. Just because of, like he said, he understands the boats, and it's his friends that he's thinking and making decisions for. So
yeah.
what better way of doing it? And obviously all of his experience and credentials, gives you a warm and fuzzy feeling also.
Well, even beyond that, Doc, you told me that you don't accept any pay for your services at the offshore races. Tell us why.
A couple of reasons. Number one, I want to find a way to give back. And I understand that races are a challenge between the producer collecting enough sponsor money and a variety of things. And for me, when I traveled around the world teaching spine surgery, my wife realized it's my passion, like a religion. So she accepted me being gone a lot. And if I do this, and I pay my own way, I book my own flights, I take care of my own lodging, and I go there for the whole weekend to help, it's doing it the same thing. And I also, in medicine, we have medical litigation issues always, and I pay a lot of money for medical malpractice insurance. And even though I practice in Colorado, I have licenses in 5 other states. I'm fortunate because my insurance carrier tells me they will cover me 100% to do this work if I do it as a volunteer, which is what I do around the world. So for me, that makes it very simple. I don't really need the money. That's not why I do it, but I do it a way to give back each year.
Well, thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But before that, you were also a national world champion offshore racer for a number of years.
I raced in 3 different boats. They were all V bottoms. I don't have any experience in the catamaran. I realized at this phase of my life, it's probably not best for me. But I I did. I raced with Brian Forehand, who at one time was in charge of Fountain and now runs his own company with Marker 17 Marine. I think we raced 7 years and won 4 or 5 times. And it was a phenomenal passion for me. I liked it. Um, but the downsides weren't as great as the upsides, only because I lived in Denver. And at the end, unlike Myrick and other teams, when the races were over, I had pieces and parts of motors and drives and everything in Key West, and everything would get shipped back to Lake of the Ozarks. But I'd be in Colorado, it'd be snowing. I have no idea what's going to go on with all this equipment. And then be 4 or 5 months before I got back. And that was always a little frustrating because I'm a very organized kind of person about that. So we found ways to overcome that. But I don't really see myself wanting to do that. But as long as I have a medical license and am welcome at those events, I would rather do that for this space instead. And many times I bring other docs with me. Last year in Key West, I had the Dr. Kelly Reed lives in Key West. She's a great ER physician, highly respected. It's helped me a lot. And then I had 2 other doctors that were visiting me that I were training, one from Singapore and another one, and they both came to all help as part of the team.
Yeah,
That's cool. They the process of what you're talking about, leaving Key West and then trying to get everything. I mean, it's another month of work. And I can remember being your neighbor and you buying that building on top of the hill. And then it would be like, I got to come back. I got to get all my propellers together. I got to get all this. And it would basically fill up a barn. And it did take a lot of time and, a lot of money to get all that done.
What always amazes me is teams like Myrick and other teams, they're always helping each other out at these races and events, and they loan this, and they're always so busy. I don't know how they keep track of what they loaned to somebody. In my case, people would come to me, hey, I borrowed this from you a year ago. I forgot, okay, so I don't remember. But that's just, I don't know how they keep track of all the different things. I mean, they'll harvest parts off their spare motors to help people, so they can continue to race and be out there.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely a big family, and you always want to win with the most competition there. That way you can, say that you're the best, because if somebody isn't there from something that you might have the part for, it's it'd be a sad deal. But yep, it's I've always thought it was cool with the different variety of boats that you've owned. I can remember when riding with you and the Stampede boat when it was open. And I don't remember, I think it came with 600s and Bravos, and then you took it to 1075s and 6s, if I'm correct.
Yes, and I think Bob Teague tested it then. If I recall, Bob Teague and Tomlinson were doing a lot of testing and publications at the time.
For Powerboat
and
at the time, I think.
Yeah, and I think I ran like 144, 145 mile an hour or something. It was unusual for a V bottom, okay?
Yeah.
And then I came up with a crazy idea. I had operated on Reggie Fountain. He came to Denver. I fixed his back. And it was funny because when he walks into the OR, the surgery hospital, he's all in black, says Fountain and everything down his names. And my staff goes, who is that guy? They really didn't recognize. They thought it was Elvis Presley. Okay. I mean, that's kind of the way it looked. But he was such a gentleman, and he had all the staff with VCR tapes plugging him into the TV after surgery to tell him to watch him on his races.
That's cool.
But anyway, I went to him and I said, I want to do something different. I want to take this open canopy, 42-foot poker run boat, cut the top off, make it, put a canopy on it, and I want to race it in Key West. He thought I was crazy. But that's what we did. And then we did it. And we raced it for a few years, and it did great. It raced a cat killer. And I gave Benny Robinson a hard time this past weekend because I told him we beat him. And he kept saying that he broke. And I said, it doesn't matter if you broke.
Exactly.
Okay. And then we sold it and went to Trinidad, where a lot of those boats went. The cat killer went there, the global warmer boat, the Stampede boat. A lot of those boats went to Trinidad for that great Carib race.
Yeah, global warmer. Was that Dan Davies' boat?
Yes.
A friend of yours that actually lived really close to you there at the lake.
Yeah, he just bought another closed canopy outer limits. I can't remember which one it was. It was a 42-foot something. I can't remember. He's getting it painted, and he is back into that scene again. So that's great.
That's cool. That's cool.
So yeah, we had that boat, and then Mike Fiore came to Brian and I in Key West and wanted to build a 29 because remember he just came out with that shorter 29. And the problem we had with the Stampede boat is it was in a V-bottom, unlimited, or extreme class. Well, the number of boats in that class went down and down and down because there was no budget, right? I mean, you could do anything, no rules, no budget. So then I said, if we really want to race, let's get into a class in V-bottom that has the most number of boats. And so that was at one time it was called Super V Light, and then they went to Super V and Super V Extreme as they changed power. And so Mike Fiore built us this carbon fiber boat for Brian and I, and designed it, and we ran it as a Snowy Mountain Brewery boat. And then I also had the fountain one just like it. It was a 29 called Watch Your Back.
Watch Your Back, yep.
We raced those two. And one time we raced both of them at the same time in Key West with a 2-boat racing team.
I remember that.
I'll tell you one quick funny story about that is that I was racing with another gentleman named Ryan, and Brian Forehand was racing the Outer Limits in the same race with a friend of mine named Mark Tuck. And something happened to my throttleman, and he couldn't race after the first day. It didn't work out. So we needed somebody. So I called my daughter, who was in college in Seattle, and asked her to fly down to join our race team for Friday and Sunday. And so she did, and she jumped in the boat with Brian, and Mark jumped in the boat with me, and we raced 2 boats on the same race team. My wife kept calling me and says, the announcers are wrong. They keep saying my daughter, Madison's in the boat. She's in college in Seattle. I never told her. And so until both race days were over, and then she finally figured it out.
Yeah, and then she probably wanted to wring your neck.
Yeah. Exactly what would happen.
Were you skirting that issue and just not answering the question directly?
Yeah, I just kept saying, I don't know. I don't listen to the radio. That's what I said.
Funny.
But she did fine, and she had a great time. And then she flew back to college. She was on a college soccer scholarship at the time. Nice. She had fun doing it too. Both of my kids had a great time in the boat. And I learned a lot from riding with Myrick. And actually, when Myrick was working for Dave Scott, and they both recognized I had this boat that went really fast, and I probably could use more experience, they set it up that my boat got sent down to Miami, if you recall, and John Tomlinson spent 2 days with my son and I just driving the boat, giving us all the pearls that he could. And Dave, Scott, and Myrick set that whole program up, and I'll never forget it. We became great friends, and I learned a lot.
Yep, I remember that.
Doc, I mean, as a wonderful teacher as you are, in that case, you were a student. What was the biggest takeaway from that learning session that you got from Johnny?
How difficult it is for him to tell you what you should feel and be able to try to feel it yourself. It's similar to snow skiing. Someone that hasn't skied on snow, you should do this and do this and do this, but you have to be able to feel it to understand that. For him, it was just natural. I mean, he's a very talented guy, and it was incredibly natural. But it took a while to be able to get that feel when you adjusted the tabs or adjusted the drive, and you could see how the boat behaved a little different. I think it takes they brag all the time, a seat time, and that's something that for me, it took quite a while to get it. Myrick works on boats all day. He was building the boats on the Naughty team that I think was Dave Scott and John Tomlinson. And then sometimes I watched where he would go to a race when they were running
2 boats,
turbo motor. He had 2 boats and doing different things, and Myrick could do all the testing and stuff. And it's just about feel, I guess. And that's the talent. And the problem is in powerboating, you don't have. People can go, if they have the money, buy, as Myrick knows, any boat that goes as fast as they want with no experience. And we would think that the limiting factor would be getting insurance, so therefore they can't without experience. But that isn't a limiting factor. You don't even need a license today.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very different. It would be like extreme cars, but, a boat is a lot harder to handle than a car. And I can think of it being as like if you were a pilot, like of a helicopter, and a lot of people go off of how many hours you've done it to like kind of judge how good you are, or how many landings, or how many, how many of this, how many of that. But, in boating, you don't keep track of that. So you really don't know how experienced you are because there's really people don't log it the way they, could possibly do it.
Is that a problem for a lot of the customers that are buying new boats, Myrick? That is it more difficult to get insurance if their experience is lower? And how do they judge experience? Sometimes it's just the number of years you've owned the boat. They
Yeah,
assume that's more
yeah,
experience. You could buy a boat,
yes,
put it in a garage for 2 years, and now you got
yeah,
experience.
yeah. So that is a problem right now. It's it's they base it off of boats that you've owned before, and then how many years have you owned a boat. But most of the underwriters and most of the people that they're giving this information to don't have any clue on what they're listening to. They
Hmm.
could tell them, I have a 38 Scarab, say it's a 90s model and it has 1,000 horsepower, and they're going to say, oh, no, we decline that compared to, an outboard cat that might have 300s, which obviously if you do the weight to power ratio, the outboard cat's going to be much faster, but the person that's getting, riding it doesn't know how to judge it. So that's why you have to go to a specialized, like WIA or to Mosencraft or to I was was wondering with the death of Rick Felson, because he was I think I forget
Hmm.
the name of his dollar. Was it Dollar or anyway Hawk? Sorry, Hawk Racing.
Talk.
Rick Felson was, and he just passed away. I wonder what the customers that were going to him, if they're going to go to X Insurance or stuff like that, because a lot of those race style, it's kind of like a Lloyd's in London application. It's a high risk, and they really don't even insure the boat when it's on the course. They just insure the boat and transport and liability and all that stuff. So it's a it's a slippery slope.
Can I ask a question, Myrick? How do you, when you at performance, a customer has a boat issue and they want to go for a ride with you? How do you guarantee your safety when you're getting in a boat with an unknown person that goes really, really fast? Do you always do the driving and or run the controls so that you can control it? I mean, I can't imagine you'd want to sit there and be an observer and watch them.
Yeah. So 90% of the time, other than when I'm teaching somebody, I'm in control of the boat, and I'm trying to do like you were describing, trying to tell this person, the variables that I'm trying to watch. Wind direction, how big was the boat we just passed, what kind of boat we're in, to know the different things to tell them to make it where the boat is doing the right thing and is at its optimum performance and at its safest attitude. So I guess my judgment as to be able to say, whoa, 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 you're not doing it right. And, most of the time it would just be like knock their hand back on the throttle or just alert them to say, hey, you don't have to prove anything to me, and I feel outside of my comfort zone. I've had to do it a few times. It would be rare, but I'm probably more of a wuss than most people are sitting in the passenger seat, because I can feel what the boat's doing and know what the person might be doing wrong. So at that point, I'm playing, I don't know, devil's advocate and being like, hey, slow down. We need to regroup. And most of the time when we're selling a boat, whether it's one boat that we own, which isn't as often, when it's a consignment boat, we're doing all the driving uh, as a professional, showing this person what the boat's capable of. And I'll sit there with them right beside me in the passenger seat going, do you want me to do anything else with the boat? Do you want me to go 30 miles an hour? Do you want me to go 100 miles an hour? Do you want me to go through turns? That way they feel that they're getting as much as they can, experience as they can, without actually having control of a brokered person. Say for example, your boat was for sale, Doc, and you're like, well, I'll let Myrick drive it, but I don't want this guy that I don't know driving it. So that's where you try to make the consignee feel warm and fuzzy, knowing that we're just not going to hand the throttles or the steering wheel over to just anybody, basically.
Sure. How important is it though if you say this boat runs 141 that they want to see it run that fast? Or I mean, because you could cut some of the fuel down and you could do this.
Yeah.
But I mean, that they get tied to a number sometimes, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
I've told,
bragging.
I've told stories. Most of the time, you know, we're like, hey, say that the number is 141. You know, obviously it depends on what boat, and 99% of the time they're not going to get to experience that with me being in the boat with them when they're buying it. You know, I might have a video of it. I might be able to go, yeah, with this propeller pitch, with this slip factor, with this RPM, the boat is capable of that. But due to the fact that you haven't bought it, you know, and there's inherent risks in all this, we're not gonna try that today. So, but you know, if I will run them up to, you know, 120, 125 and show them that it does that pretty easily, because 140-mile-an-hour boat should do 120, 125 fairly easy. So at that point, you know, you can show them, hey, see how hard it pulled, you know, because a lot of the times in these boats, and you know, Doc, once you get to that top speed, the boat kind of starts doing the weird stuff under acceleration. When it's really loaded up and pulling, it's a different animal. It's just that last 5% of the mile per hour that you're looking for that makes it a little hairier.
Yeah. I would assume it's the same. I mean, even when I'm training for Ironman, most of the time we do our training at 80% of your maximum performance. And maybe that's some number
To prevent
you guys
injury
at
most
your,
of the time, I assume.
yeah, prevent injury, and you got to maximize recovery. I mean, the athletes that are, you know, competing in the NFL, they don't go out and run sprints at the maximum all day long. They train, and then they have that ability to do that for recovery. And probably it would be the same. I assume you guys would probably say, look, we only take the boat to 85% of maximum, and you can experience it, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, speaking of Doc's boat, Doc, tell us about your boat. It's beautiful Outer Limits.
Thanks. Right now I have from the longest, I have a yellow Outer Limits closed canopy boat. Mike Fiore didn't make many of the closed canopy boats. It has 1350, 1550 motors in it. When I first acquired it, I liked the boat. I watched it when it was being shown at the Miami Boat Show. I think there was a Russian customer that had designed it with Mike Fiore, and it had some Teague motors in it, and I converted it over to the Mercury Power, the 1350, 1550. I've never, knock on wood, even ran it on 1550 power.
You'd
You
be
just got to
addicted.
switch the keys, but then you got, and then I got to change the fuel. I don't want to do all that. You know, I just want to go ride the. I have a hard enough time finding time to clean it because I'm very particular about making sure it's clean and waxed all the time. But it's got air conditioning in it. It's got 5 seats. It's really dark inside, so you can see out real well. And every time I get in it, it gives me a great smile on my face for the thrust and the way it handles and the way it looks when it pulls in. And for me, it's a piece of art. I love it. I worry about it when it sits on my dock because I got to go clean the bugs off every day. And I'm happy sometimes when it's just sitting in my barn and then I can put it in and use it and take it out.
Yeah.
And I
No,
like
good
taking it to Boca
system.
Raton. And then I have a 38 center console, a fountain that I had, and I love that boat. You know, I had it in Myrick will testify probably before center consoles became popular at Lake of the
Yeah, you
Ozarks.
did. I
And a lot
remember
of people
that.
kept saying, "What is this? It's a fishing boat. Why do you bring a fishing boat?" And I go, "It's the ultimate boat to pile in people and go to a restaurant, have a dinner, go somewhere and socialize." And it has 300s on it, and it's a great boat. And then my father passed away a year or so ago in the early 90s, and he had 2 boats that he saved all of his money for, a 72 and a 73, I believe, Century Coronado fiberglass boats that he bought at Lake of the Ozarks from this place that doesn't exist anymore by dog days called Lynx Landing. And I took over both boats and have completely removed all the interior and had both motors converted to fuel injection, and rebuilt both of them to make them look like they're brand new and they're 50 years old. They're
They're
just
go-
gorgeous looking
I
boats.
remember when your dad had them, how gorgeous they were, even at that point too. It was so
Yeah.
cool watching your mom and dad. Let me think, Betty and Harold,
Yeah.
and he always had these boats that he's talking about they're enclosed to a
Yeah.
certain amount. They have a windshield and they have a little top on them, and I can always remember he'd have a little flag flying on the back, and I'd watch him put by the shop all the time. it was always a treat to watch Harold and Betty out in their boats.
And my dad would take her skiing, and he made her skis in the bathtub. He would never go buy them. He would soak the wood up because he was a carpenter,
Yeah.
bend the skis up like that, put his own bindings on, and pull her around the lake early in the morning before anybody got up. And that was his big catch. And he passed away at 92, and my mom's Betty's still 93, and she's doing pretty well.
Wow, that's great. Your dad was such a good dude. I can remember he'd come down, he'd open up the trunk of his car and he'd have scrapbooks and he'd have everything. And he would hang out at the shop for hours talking to me. Yeah, it was just great having him around.
Yeah.
He was a Korean War veteran and Marine in the Marines, and he loved to talk about, his life and his experience in boats. And he would sit around and even watching Myrick and say, "Wow, you should do it this way, or you should do it this way." He would sit on his golf cart.
Yeah.
And he was a great mechanic, and he could look at a problem and tell you what was wrong with it.
Yeah, he would even have all the X-rays of his back and show me all the work that you did to his back. Right there, we're holding him up to the sun, looking at his back and all the screws and stuff that he had in it.
Wow.
Yeah, he had bad problems, and I reconstructed his back and put like 18 screws in his spine and fixed it and straightened it up. And I treated him just like I did anyone else. And at times he didn't think I was a great son because I was yelling at him to get going, after surgery. But I've been blessed. I've surgically reconstructed my wife's spine and my dad's, and still have all of his X-rays. And when my dad passed away, Myrick, and had it cremated, I made them give me all the hardware back that I put in his spine. So I still got it all.
Wow, that's crazy.
Well, I understand you used to give him quite a hard time when you were younger.
Yeah, always pushing the envelope.
About a golf cart and a radio station?
Yeah, once at Lake of the Ozarks, it's a little not as IT as maybe out on the West Coast in California. So you guys still have that garage sale on the radio, where people can call in and sell things.
Radio.
So I would call in and tell my dad's stuff was for sale, just so that people would, or it was free. I said, it's free. You just got to come pick up his golf cart and all this. And he's sitting on the dock and got hundreds of phone calls because everybody was coming to try to get his stuff, and he was so angry about it. But,
that's
that's what you do. That's a relationship that Myrick's going to have with his kids, and you build that over time, and that's very precious. And all of us are very fortunate to have people, both friends and family around us, that we've all learned from.
Yeah, for sure. I lost my father 2 years ago, and I miss him every day. So I know what you mean.
It's hard.
Yeah.
There's just unanswered questions. So,
So while Doc, you and I were snowmobiling in Wyoming, Myrick was getting inducted into the APBA Hall of Champions for the third time with MCon Racing and Monster Energy. So congratulations, bro.
Congratulations, Myrick.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I know that Tyler was there, and Tyler was bumming because Tyler said that he had been out to your snowmobile rally before, and that he wanted to go, but he knew that this thing was coming up and all that. So, yep, it was a neat event, and it's always cool to meet new people, and especially in the APBA, it's such a broad spectrum of people that are getting those awards. It might be a 10-year-old, 12-year-old kid that runs a little J boat around with a 15 horse on the back, that might have done 80 races this year, or it's unlimited hydro, like the old Miss Budweiser boat, or it's offshore racing. So, I'm very, very fortunate to be part of a team that's gets these accolades. So thank you very much.
How many years have you been shooting for that, Myrick, and what's your next goal?
Well, I had never really shot for it, but I've gotten it 3 years in a row. One with Rusty in the Performance Boat Center, Fast Diesel Systems boat, and then 2 with Tyler in the Super Cat class. And I don't know, it'd be neat to, I was actually looking through the book the other day, and I look at people's names that I recognize, like Johnny Tomlinson, obviously was my mentor, and he's had it 4 times. So I'd like to try to shoot for at least tying the old goat, So
nice.
Anyway.
So who else was your mentors besides John Tomlinson that you think really helped you develop your talent in boat racing?
Well, you know, try to take a little bit from everybody. Being around Brian Forehand, even talking about V bottoms and you, because we spent a lot of time talking on the phone, and having conversations. But probably Johnny Tomlinson, Dave Scott, Randy Sism. And then you got to think about all the mechanics, Matt Patterson, Steve Wallace, all that really comes into play. So those would probably right off the top be the people that mattered the most to me, whether they were teaching me how to keep a boat going or whether they're telling me what I'm doing wrong. And a lot of those guys are good at telling me what I'm doing wrong. So, sometimes that helps, if you have somebody that's quiet, that really doesn't tell you, hey, do it this way, it takes a little bit longer to learn. So, I'm good at being criticized and can usually handle it. So Bob Teague's also another good person that has taught me a lot about boats and how to run a boat properly and be safe and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
how about you, Doc? Who is your mentor? Because you've had to have learned a lot about boats.
Well, I think what really started my father helped me early on just to be around boats. I was very blessed. And then I think it was the turning point, as I mentioned earlier, when you and Dave made that opportunity to introduce me to John Tomlinson, and I took the trek all the way down and spent time with him and his wife and went to dinner. And since then, he trusted me. I took care of his mom's neck and his wife's spine problem, and we kind of came into that family. And then when it really started with racing, obviously it was with Brian Forehand. We had a love-hate relationship. I'll be very upfront about it. There are times when we really couldn't get along in the boat, but he was a really charismatic guy that knew how to feel a boat. He just didn't have, I don't think, the ability to transfer that knowledge to other people right away. And that wasn't something that was in his DNA. I think that's changed dramatically. He runs an incredibly successful business and can modify and develop people. And he has a son now about 5. And so his mindset's changed a lot. And I learned a lot from him. But a lot of the same people you've talked to, I worked with Matt Patterson and Steve, both great mechanics at Lake of the Ozarks. Myrick and I would share ideas and talk to people. Bob Teague's a guy I could call 24 hours a day regarding something, and he calls me 24 hours a day regarding his medical problems, and I help him out too. So it goes both ways. It really does. But it's an incredible organization of people. I learned a lot from Bob Bull, and Bob has helped me with so many things. Incredibly generous person when he had his shop and stuff if I ever needed it.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, you and Billy Allen have been friends for a long time, and it was due to maybe vacationing at Lake of the Ozarks and Mill Creek at a similar campground or something like that?
Actually, it goes back much further. When he was about 12, he worked for me when I was managing my father's business in Iowa.
Wow, I didn't know that
as a lawn and garden. And so that's where he became a lot of his mechanical skills. He didn't have a lot of things going on with his family, and my dad took him under his wing, and he became part of our family. I have a couple other brothers, and so we became really close and employed him when I think he made an announcement at the snowmobile event. Maybe it was 11 or 12. He started working for me.
Wow.
And we've been friends ever since then. And if he ever needed anything, I would do that. But yeah, all the way through, he became a really good mechanic working for me when he was 11 or 12.
I remember riding the first time I ever met Billy was with you, and we took a ride in the Stampede boat, and we actually had a drive failure way up the glaze arm, but we had a long idle, and we really got to know each other on the way back through that long idle the whole time. But yep.
Yeah, he told me he came and helped me as a pit crew with Brian and I one year, and he had a lot of experience in racing stock cars. He was really great at racing stock cars, and he kept saying, "I'm gonna get into this boat racing." And you hear that all the time too, Myrick. I go, "Yeah, sure, you're gonna get into boat racing." And Billy goes, "No, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this." And now you look at it. I mean, he has a house in Des Moines that the entire house is built around his rigs, where the boat goes in, the RV goes in, and everything. He walks out of his bedroom and he's in his shop. It's
Yeah,
part of his life, and he's very passionate about it.
Yeah.
that's
Is that
cool.
why you kind of base like the snowmobile rally around powerboaters and other parties that you host at like the Ozarks around powerboaters? Is because they've been so instrumental in your life?
Yes, and I think the more I offer, for me, it's an incredible experience to do what they do on the water, what I can do in the snow in the middle of nowhere. Whether they come from Florida, North Carolina, Missouri, it is completely different as you just
Yeah.
experienced first time in Wyoming.
Yeah.
And once I turn them on to that, they really get addicted and they remember it and then they think about it. It doesn't interfere with their race schedule. It's a time they can all get together. The end of January has always worked well, and it's I think just a great opportunity to pull everybody together.
Yeah, for sure. So that's the Saratoga Hot Springs Resort in Saratoga, Wyoming, which also houses your Snowy Mountain Brewery, which is a brewery that you started and you got a degree in to learn how to do it properly.
Yeah, about in Myrick, I'll tell you, we had a very small brewery up in Saratoga, and I didn't know a lot about beer except I enjoyed drinking it, like most people. And so I told my wife, I said, I want to build a state-of-the-art brewery, the best one, most computerized, sophisticated microbrewery in Wyoming. And she goes, you don't know enough about beer, you can't do this. So I read a bunch of books, and she goes, that's not good enough. So then I went back to school at Regis University and found out that they offered a master's in brewing. And it took a year and a half. I was the oldest guy in the class, of course. I had to go back to the lab and grow yeast and do all the chemical analysis and change the chemicals of water and do business plans. And I finished the first one. And then I said, okay, now I'm going to build this brewery. And we made it so it's all computerized. It's made the company Myrick probably will say, Mercury is one of the better motor companies. Well, the best in brewery is called Specific. It's out of Vancouver. It's the Cadillac or Ferrari of all brewery equipment. And that once I put that all in, it was easy to find a brewer. Now I have 2.5 brewers, and we have a canning machine, and we have 23,000 customers a year coming to the town to drink beer and to soak in the hot springs. So yes, we can distribute it, but I can't even keep up with the people that come to the resort. We have a hard enough time to can it to send it to other places besides within the state.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when you were first doing it, and you would bring the growlers, and I still
Yeah.
have a few
Yeah.
of those growlers in my man cave to show off the Snowy Mountain Brewery and all that.
Yeah.
And some of the guys from the CR racing team, Casey, would come over all summer long and ask me to bring him 3 or 4 kegs all the time because he put them on tap on his dock.
Oh, wow.
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I got a chance to taste most of your beers, and they are delicious. So hats off to you on those. Very well done. Well, Doc, I want to thank you for joining us. It's been an hour, and that just flew by. You just blew me away with all the stuff that you're into and how much you get into it, and how passionate you are about everything, and how you take everything to the nth degree on everything that you do. So thank you for all you do for offshore racing. Thank you for everything you do for the industry. You're incredible.
You're welcome. And Myrick, don't forget, we taught you the basics of scuba diving too.
Yeah.
When you went to Cozumel.
I went to Cozumel, and he had a master diver there, and I got to dive the wall. I got to dive a wreck. I was telling that story just the other day. I mean, yeah, it's lots of great stories with Doc. Yeah. So thank you very much.
I wished all of the powerboat racers would get the basic certification in diving so they don't get scared in this dunker and they feel comfortable hanging upside down.
That would make a lot
I
of
made Brian
sense.
Forehand do it because I rate it. And I used to talk to John Carbonell about it, and he says, well, the one time we tried to push it, we encouraged it in the Superboat International or SBI book. They didn't have people do it. It's not that difficult today. You can do an online course first, and then you do the pool sessions in open water. But it would make them feel so much more comfortable that they're okay to breathe. They can get a clear regulator. They can do things. And I take those for granted. And once you learn, as if you dive, it would be safer for everybody if they would take the time to do it.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. Again, thank you, Doc. Safe travels. I know you're heading off to Europe in a couple days, and then just goes on from there. So
yeah. He's
We'll
got
see
a
you
few.
soon.
He's got a few miles under his belt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I can tell. I'll
This
be
is
in Davos,
another
Switzerland for about 10 days. So
nice. This has been
Thank,
another episode of the
thank
Boats and
you.
Bros podcast with Doc Janssen. Incredible man. Thank you, Myrick. Good
thanks.
seeing you. Congratulations on the Hall of Champions again. Doc, thank you for an incredible weekend in Wyoming. And please remember to subscribe, like, rate, and share the Boats and Bros podcast. And we will see you on the next one. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
This podcast is powered by Speedboat Magazine. Subscribe now at speedboat.com for 9 power-packed current issues a year direct to your mailbox.